Now, um, we will get into the marketing, or to be precise, more into growth marketing or growth hacking. So all the marketers amongst you already should know that word or what that means, and the others or founders or those who are just interested in marketing growth hacking, I think there's a lot you can learn now with our next masterclass. It's called Growth Hacking Wins for Any Business to Get Immediate Results. I can really just say that's true. We use growth hacking ourselves at Pirate, and it helped us a lot, especially also with Pirate Live. So yeah, I would love to welcome Taylor to the session.
Hey, how are you?
Hey, how are you? I'm great. Thanks. How are you?
I'm getting through the day. I feel like today, I don't know, this week has been just a lot of stuff happening all at once. I think people are finally kind of over the vacation period and are ready to actually
Yeah,
start working.
yeah.
So crazy,
And
crazy.
it's just Tuesday.
Very good point.
All right. So you're currently, I think Clint is sitting in Copenhagen. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah, we're based in Copenhagen, Denmark.
Cool. So that's where you're turned or tuning in from.
Yes, but you can probably tell by the accent. I'm actually originally from Washington, D.C., so
Yeah,
East
I want to
Coast.
say that's not a Danish accent.
Not quite.
Okay. How come you ended up in Denmark?
I feel like I kind of got tricked. I was working crazy hours back in the US. I was at the Washington Post and came out for a very brief visit and just kind of fell in love with the city. Not with like a girl. I feel like that's always how people end up out here. But yeah, I mean, that was 4.5 years ago. So it's been a wild ride.
All right. So when you moved there, when did you start with Clint? Right
So
away,
Clint
or?
is, yeah, it's a relatively new venture. So for those that have either moved to different parts of Europe or Scandinavia specifically, it's always tricky to get a visa. So you kind of have to have something in the way of a company to either help support or mitigate some of the bureaucracy. So I've scaled 4 different companies over the last 4.5 years,
Wow.
and Clint came about in September of last year. So we're coming up on our 1 year anniversary.
Awesome. All right. So soon a first year birthday. Um, so can you tell us, like, in a minute, what a little bit more about Clint marketing? I don't know if you're going to do that anyways in your masterclass. I'm just trying to wait that it's full, because then the session will switch over to your masterclass, just in case
Ah,
people join us at exactly 4 p.m. I don't want them to miss anything of your masterclass.
of course.
That's
Yeah, the goal of the organization is to basically implement massive growth using growth hacking tactics mixed in with a little bit of technical marketing and some of the creative. So, trying to get scalable growth models in play for small, medium, and large organizations.
all right. And is there any favorite tool you guys work with or endorse or anything?
I'm a huge fan of tools, and so you'll see in my presentation that I definitely outline some of my favorites across the board. I mean, in terms of being able to get something in the way of a diagnosis from the outside competitor research, I talk about Hrefs a lot. So I'm sure that there's plenty of people that have used that out there.
All right. So it's 4. I think people are tuning in. So from here on, I would leave it to you. Have fun, and looking forward to learn more.
Beautiful.
Okay.
Just need to be able to share my screen. I think that's the
Sure.
only inhibitor. Okay, great. All right, I'm going to move really fast, so feel free to put some comments or questions in there if something springs up, because I want to leave a little bit of room for specific comments, because I cover things sometimes in very like specific detail, other times not so much. But thank you so much for having me. A little bit about me. CEO of Clint Marketing. We are a growth hacking agency based in Copenhagen, Denmark, but very international. I also run Architecture Quote, which is a startup that helps architects discover new projects to work on internationally as well as locally. And I run growthsecrets.org, which is a growth hacking masterclass website that I created. And every time that I do new presentations, I make sure to upload them on there as well. I'm originally from Washington, D.C., been in the startup scene for 13 years. It makes me feel super old. 6-time startup founder. I don't know. I love doing this stuff, but I want to highlight a couple of successes in my past. So these are some of the fastest growing startups within Denmark that I helped scale. And I've done that through a number of interesting angles, growth hacking, digital marketing in general. I'm happy to take specific questions, but we can move on from that. I've already talked about some of the different things that I do. I'm always down to share my slides. I just don't share them with other agencies because, for what it's worth, we're competing. So that's that. So my goal for today is to provide value. I want to make sure that I'm giving enough information away for people to be able to have actionable insights right away. And I think that there's so many different rooms for growth. So feel free to ask questions and hopefully we'll be able to hit a ton of this stuff later. I get a good feel for who's in here. I've been kind of stalking everybody's different profiles. So normally this would be the interactive portion, or I'd ask like who is here for startup growth, who's in a larger scale up, that type of stuff. But let's keep it running. So I often try to explain what growth hacking is because honestly, everybody gives a different answer and it's kind of a bullshit jargon buzzword these days. So growth hacking to me is metaphorically defined as, let's say your car breaks down, you have two mechanics on duty. The first one has read a book or every book about fixing automobiles, but has never actually gotten under the hood. And the other person has actually fixed every component within different automobiles. I think the second person becomes the growth hacker because they've gotten their hands dirty, they've tried out a lot of different things. There's a big difference between theory and experience. And the way that I often define growth hacking, it's basically this. It's growth hacking is doing the most with the least amount of time and money in order to get the biggest results. I never want to do a 1-for-1 approach. I always want to make it a minimum of 1 for 50. So what is the one element that I can turn on or create, in which case I can actually have 50 discussions or 50 engagements or 1,000. The idea is we want to optimize everything. Everything goes through a process, and we replace all these old school manual processes with tools that automate everything. In terms of maybe some of the mindset to get into growth hacking, I think it's incredibly important to understand that marketing is all about systems. So if you understand one system really well, you can apply it to all the others. For me, it was content. I loved writing. I was huge into video production. I started learning how to make videos when I was 13, and eventually by the age of 18 was getting flown all over the country doing large-scale video production projects. It made it really easy for me to extrapolate what I had already learned to new areas. So if you can do content, it's not that big of a leap to understand SEO, SEM, and so on. In terms of the stuff that I think most people struggle with, it's often prioritization, what to do first. So I wanted to give some early stage stuff that I often help a lot of startups through because honestly, it's the easiest stuff out there. It's just people don't realize you have to build up solid foundations first. And this is super important if you have a limited amount of money and you don't have a lot of runtime to be able to make your startup successful, or at least generate something in the way of traction so that you can get investment. This is the Pareto Principle. It's the 80-20 rule. The whole idea behind this is basically 80% of your effort will get 20% of the results. There's so many different analogies of this, like 80% of the alcohol is drank by 20% of the population. 80% of your sales will be closed by 20% of your sales team. This is also what happens within content. 80% of your best leads come from 20% of the channels. So let's think about this holistically. If we're trying to put the time and energy into a certain area or a certain funnel or a certain channel, then we have to be aware of what our most profitable channels are. So consistently, I run into founders that are like, well, we got to get stuff out on LinkedIn. Everybody's on LinkedIn. And it's okay, cool, interesting. How many of your leads previously have actually turned into revenue from the deals that came from LinkedIn? If the answer is 5%, which is pretty consistent with what I've experienced, then maybe we shouldn't be putting 50% of the marketing time into LinkedIn. This is super important to realize where your traffic comes from and how you're able to boost something in the way of revenue. If we're focusing on vanity metrics, we'll never get there. Vanity metrics are essentially just things that look cool but don't actually mean anything. So like if it's, I don't know, like number of followers or number of views on your website or a specific blog post, unless that's converting into real traffic, or sorry, real engagement that then results in revenue, it's maybe not the thing that you should be measuring. So there's a lot of different tools that I often encourage people to get set up first. This is as basic as it gets. Analytics, Search Console, and then eventually you want to be able to measure some stuff using some outside tools like Ahrefs. Yeah, I could go into Google Data Studio, but I'm not going to. But these are the metrics on the left side that often I think a lot of folks are at least measuring in an early stage growth period without actually measuring revenue. So let's talk about content, because content is one of those things I think everybody claims they do and does it well, I guess, but not as many people are actually executing on it at scale. So good content will always win. There's this great little quote from Ron Swanson, which is, never half-ass two things, whole-ass one thing, which basically means unless you're going to put out something that's worthwhile, don't bother putting it out at all. My goal is to make great pieces of content that will drive more than half of my revenue. And this is really hard for us to actually figure out what it is that people are asking that will eventually find you organically, or what brings that spark moment, that trigger where somebody's like, oh my God, I need whatever you're selling. And there's different ways to it. This is a screenshot of Dollar Shave Club. And I have a bunch of other examples in here, but since I'm only sharing an individual tab, I'm not going to break out and pull these up, and I can certainly go into a few different examples. But Dollar Shave Club essentially sold over the span of 3 years. They sold for $1 billion with a B, and it's, you know, a shaver or razors of the month club. So like nothing really groundbreaking. But the concept was quite simple. They made a really well-to-do, interesting video. And if you have a moment, do a quick Google search for Dollar Shave Club explainer video, because this thing put them on the map, which ultimately led to a $1 billion acquisition, which is absurd. So some of the other stuff that I think people get mired down into is understanding where the best content comes from. Where do the ideas start? And of course, I can show different ways in which we can find the keywords that you want to build content around based on intent. But the other way is what I would basically say, stealing, like you're borrowing. So what I've kind of outlined here is actually Brian Dean's idea, which he runs Backlinko. It's a great little SEO/growth hacking blog, but it's called the skyscraper technique. And the concept is quite simple. In the old days in New York City, everybody wanted the tallest skyscraper in New York City. And due to the confines of engineering at the time, you could only get it up to about 90 floors. But if you put a giant flagpole on top of your building, for a little while, you're able to say that you have the tallest skyscraper in all of New York City. So we can do that with our competitors' content. So if you throw one of your competitors into Ahrefs, you're able to hit either top content or top pages, and this will allow you to see what are the articles or pages that they rank the most amount of keywords or the most amount of traffic, most amount of referring domains. This should be indicative of their best pieces of content. So if I write a longer form, better version of the article that highlights more examples and more details and is more SEO perfect, it's very likely that I can actually capture a good portion of the keywords that they're going after, which is just like taking the best player on the opposing team and making them play for you. This is something that happens all the time. I do it with great regularity. I've had it done to me, which is of course frustrating. But again, you go into Ahrefs, put in your competitor, hit top content, and then you can export. And you can do this across all of your competitors. And you'll be able to see pretty quickly that some competitors are winning on content, others are using different methods. And it becomes very clear once you get used to kind of tracking this stuff down. The other side of this that I was mentioning just a moment ago was intent-based search. So what are the things that people ask for prior to making a buyer decision? So the first two things on the right side, you have informational and navigational. And the concept is these are questions that don't really often end with a search or a click, which is kind of okay, not a big deal. So like if I'm looking for, I don't know, like navigational would be like the login for Twitter or LinkedIn login. Great, like I can get to that, but I'm probably not going to outrank LinkedIn on that. That's super unlikely. Or what is the capital of Denmark? Not really going to outrank Wikipedia or the answer snippet that's there, because you don't really need to click through on that. The last two are the interesting ones. So if you're searching for something that you might want to purchase in the future, that shows intent. So best drone cameras. I'm probably not looking that up because I'm bored or I just like looking at drone cameras. I'm probably thinking about buying. And transactional is where you're actually talking about price. And that ultimately is what makes most of the buyer decisions happen. So if we start thinking about our content this way, we can start building these key phrases out with certain elements of these intent-based searches behind it, which means if we're generating enough of this content regularly, like, we're gonna win. Some other things that I often answer, and it's so frustrating whether it's a very large organization or even a brand new startup, people don't realize that you need to be able to put together long form content in order to hit a few different SEO signals according to a number of 200 different SEO signals. But one of the most important is time on page, clicking, and scrolling. So the idea is that if you answer a question in 750 words, unless it's really profoundly perfect in terms of SEO, people aren't going to stick around for very long. So the goal is to figure out how can I answer every area, every indirect and direct question, one order of magnitude away within a long form content piece. Content pieces that are longer consistently outrank the short 500 to 1,000 word blog posts. So the graphic on the right from BuzzSumo basically shows the average shares by content length for social media. On the left, you can see that it's basically for SERP, search engine results pages. Just a long way to go to say that long form content wins. Stop using your time on short form content that will never rank. This is also really important for long tail SEO keyword searches. So a long tail SEO keyword search might be 5, 6, 10, 10 different words all put together. The old way that we used to search for something is not the way that we search for something today. If I was looking for jeans in 2001, I probably would throw jeans into a search engine. Nowadays, that doesn't really matter. And I'm probably searching for jeans, whatever the wash type is, by my size, by the brand name, and on sale. That's a really long search. And by the way, that's probably more common than somebody just going, jeans. It's just how we search. It's like we don't even realize that we're doing things differently. In terms of generating good content that actually scales fairly well and does have some reciprocal angles, lists always work really well. So like you take a list and you blend it with an article, it's called a listicle, right? And so some of the best articles that I've ever managed to get a ton of traffic were generally long form listicles. So on the right side, you can see the 50 best startup cities, 50 startups that came from hackathons, 50 examples of corporations that failed to innovate. These were all the top blogs from my previous company, and these were generating 99% of the traffic for the website organically. It was absurd, especially the third one. So this one was generating upwards of 80% for the first 6 months. So this is one of those things that if you put in a little bit of thought, what is one order of magnitude away from whatever it is that I'm selling, you stand a much higher chance of actually ranking for some of these key phrases and ultimately bringing some buyers over along with them. Moving along, better titles are so easy. This was actually a screen grab from when I was doing kind of a live presentation, and I use a lot of these really fun, they're called blog title builders or blog title generators. My favorite is SEO Presser. You put in whatever the key phrase is and you hit generate the term, and what comes out of it is really interesting. It's different kind of re-angled pieces of blog titles. And so like the first one that like was out there struck me as like 5 things nobody told you about t-shirts. And I read that and I was like, I wear t-shirts almost on a daily basis. Like, what don't I know about t-shirts? And it's one of those things that if we start thinking about our business this way, I think there's a lot of opportunities to be able to scale up content, which then scales a lot more conversions, which then scales hopefully a lot more revenue. I also update every blog post that turns a little bit of success into something that I can measure. So if I have anywhere from 30 to 50 key phrases, keywords that are measured in Ahrefs for a particular article, I go back in and add in about 500 to 1,000 additional key phrases, and I optimize for that post to actually continue to rank for the stuff that I continue to fluctuate on. If there's stuff in there that's totally irrelevant, you can see this in Search Console, then I would probably stop trying to put those key phrases in and make sure to align overall with it. I think optimizing your existing pages and blog posts is one of the biggest wins you can do. The other thing that I love talking about, and I know I don't have a ton of time, but I think the best content includes everything. So like this post of Elon Musk smoking a blunt, right? Not the most PC or I don't know, like user-friendly thing if you're talking about corporate innovation, but I had to sit down with my old CEO and he's like, do you really think this is appropriate for people that are looking to understand elements of corporate innovation? My answer was, fuck yeah, it is. Because the reality is there are people that want to be engaged, delighted, entertained. They need something great about your content to remember, and also it needs to stick out enough to be able to get it shared. So if it's just really long paragraphs, forget it. Like people are going to click off of that. We have the attention span of a gnat these days. So all of my content includes multiple angles from multiple different types of media. So it's embedded video, it's infographics. On occasion, if I'm demonstrating a point, you better believe I'm putting in memes. It just depends, but ultimately your goal is to serve the users that are coming there with something of value, something that gets you to be remembered. So let's go over some fast wins because I went through content reasonably fast, but again, feel free to throw in questions if they start coming up, and hopefully we can go back into some of the different elements later. So I find that a lot of people have difficulty with generating some followers or at least traction on LinkedIn. Bear in mind that your company page gets almost no reach on LinkedIn, Facebook, and any other platform for that matter, because most of the people that are creating these social media platforms realize the only stuff that you're pushing out of these pages is junk, or it's salesy, or it's just not relevant. But if you're doing this as an individual, all of a sudden you have some more traction. One of the easiest things that you can do is import your personal and your work email, and you go to My Network, More Options, select your email provider, select all. I think they removed select all not long ago, so you'll have to manually click through, but you want to connect with everybody that's already in your network because why not? You're already connected to them. Continue to increase your network. I tend to do a lot of really simple backlink building early. These can often be anything from, I don't know, like startup listing sites like Koob.com, Vader.tv, or they could potentially be industry or niche related sites. But my goal is to go after either high authority, which means it is a website that ranks very well, or I'm looking for niche related. So if I'm selling one of the companies I used to work for, construction project management software, I need to go where other construction project management software tools exist. And that might be Capterra, GetApp, Software Advice, it just depends. But building link velocity is super important. So you want to have at least 2 to 4 of these links being generated on a weekly basis so that Google can see like, wow, these guys continue to scale things up across the board, and it seems pretty legit. When in doubt, always link to the homepage. I don't know. I could tell I could go on for ages, but I hope that's like relevant and valuable. It makes sense to almost everybody, but I'm happy to answer questions later on that. In terms of building a keyword list, you just have to do a quick Google search. There's tons of stuff on YouTube that actually, like, it's legit. It's really well made. Otherwise, if you just want to get an idea of how to begin starting to kind of put together all these different key phrases, go for Keyword Shitter, Uber Suggest. Surfer's not bad. It's a Chrome extension. It allows you to see, based off of your current search, how many other people are searching for that phrase. It also gives suggestions down the right side. So when you're generating this first initial list to then start using an actual keyword tool to suss out what is the difficulty versus the number of searches, then you're able to kind of get a nice little score to play with, and that will allow you to either sculpt some of the landing pages that you're generating or the content that you're building. I know I'm moving really fast, but I hope that makes sense. But these are some great tools. Again, you get the slides if you connect with me on LinkedIn, but I got to move on. I love that GIF. Sorry, I'm like weird about that. I love it. So in any event, I already kind of mentioned this in terms of trying to find the keyword difficulty versus the high search volume. What I'll often do is use the stoplight technique for really specific phrases that might have a search volume of over 1,000, depending on your niche. Every niche is a little different. But red is marked in, it means hard. It's marked in red. Like, I wouldn't even attempt that if I was brand new. Yellow means it could go either way, use caution. And then green is like, this is low-hanging fruit. We need to generate this article yesterday. These are really interesting ways to kind of play it. And ultimately, there's tons of tools that actually give you some amazing insights. I think my favorite, to be totally honest, is Ahrefs Keyword Explorer. It's not always 100% accurate, but it's the probably least expensive in town compared to some of the other tools that you could pick up. I think it's kind of related to content, but it's more supposed to be focused on generating a conversion funnel. So one of the most important things that people miss out on is, great, you have site visitors, they come by, they check out a blog post, or they check out maybe your features or your pricing page, and then they leave. And you really only have a short window of opportunity to capture these people. So if they leave, assume that they're probably not coming back. I think everybody can go into Ahrefs Analytics and see fairly quickly how many people are return visitors. Often it's less than 10%. So the goal is, if you have an awesome piece of content that really drives a ton of traffic, then let's make sure to have an exit pop-up that allows somebody to download a PDF version of that article. It takes all of 10 minutes to really pull that article out and give somebody a chance to put their email address in, so then they're in my funnel. And once they're in my funnel, I'll pepper them with a little bit more content, a little bit more value, but ultimately I want to continue to sell something. So maybe it's a webinar where I'm giving them a slight discount on, my product, or maybe I'm doing a feature announcement I want them to know. These are people that wouldn't have converted for any other reason than they found your content somewhat relevant. So get them in that funnel and start converting them. And there are tons of tools for doing this. I mean, you name the channel and it's there. So, if you have lead ads going on, obviously you can do that in LinkedIn and Facebook. You can also do that within display networks and YouTube these days, which is pretty badass. You can convert people in video, 23, Brightcove, Wistia. I think a lot of people are familiar with those tools. I'm impartial. I've been using Convertful for a while. I've come around to Hello Bar, but these are different tools that allow you to either throw in an exit pop-up, or put a few different CTAs inside of your blog. So if somebody's actually gotten 2/3 the way through, they're probably engaged because whatever you did there is actually resonating with them. So just depends, but I often, I see some value in doing this and getting people in that conversion funnel, because eventually, who knows? I really love exit pop-ups, and I know that they're annoying and not everybody does. I don't think it's a great idea to position these 30 seconds after somebody's visited your site. I do think it is important, if there is an exit intent, which means the cursor is going up to the top right, to throw one of these in. My favorite, one of my favorites, as of the last few months, is this one on the bottom right. It says, "Not ready to sign up today? Enter your email. We'll send you a surprise." And me being the idiot that I am, I'm like, oh, I love surprises. Let's do that. So I don't know. I think it depends on the demographic, what you're selling, what you have, but always, always, always try to get somebody with some value, but test out different messaging. And these things aren't wildly expensive, so give it a shot. There's so many great little SEO tools that people get mind blown, where it's like, that was free, right? It didn't cost me anything. So there's great tools like Bombstat, BOMBSTAT.com. It's great to be able to figure out, hey, do you have a sitemap, and is your robot.txt file actually, maybe it's being redirected to your homepage? I see that all the time. WooRank is really simple, sitechecker.pro. All of these are great little tools. Screaming Frog is a downloadable, and at least it allows you to see what's going on in terms of your H1 tags. If you don't have alt tags for your images, there's so many different areas to really start sprucing things up. Like if you even have 1 or 2 people on your marketing team and they're like, I have no projects, nothing to do. It's like, all right, pick one of these tools and just get started on something. There's a million different things out there. Or hire an agency like me to actually use real tools to be able to get this done. I think it's really sad and often disappointing to meet with people that are super eager about SEO, and every answer turns out to be like just depends. But 50% of SEO issues ultimately come down to speed. So if your website takes more than 2.5 seconds to load, you're already pushing yourself way back in the search engine results pages. And there's so many little things that you can do, and a lot of these tools actually give you a heads up as to what to do. They're not always crawler based. GT metrics or G metrics has been kind of my favorite for a while. It just depends on who you are, but see how fast your site is and see what the issues are. And let's talk about it. I think there's a million different ways to really spruce that up. Often I see, I'd say 50% of sites that have speed issues, it always comes down to, half the time, it comes down to something in the way of image compression. So if you have large scaled up images, yeah, it's never going to load, and the mobile experience is going to be god awful. So there's lots and lots of different ways to do that. Sometimes implementing Cloudflare. If you have a WordPress site, some of the top two up there, so TinyPNG and Smush are free-ish. So always something to kind of work around and play ball with. Yeah, I wanted to go into competitor insights because I feel like that's a great starting point for a lot of people that either don't know where to go next or have been just kind of stuck in a loop of, I tried a bunch of different things and nothing works. So I use a ton of different tools up on the right side. SpyFu is probably the classic one that I think a lot of people are familiar with. SimilarWeb has like a few free searches a day. See who is ranking or near you, or to be honest, like, you should know who your competitors are. Like, you should. So once you understand like who's out there, you can start to see like what their top pages are, what the keywords are that they're ranking for, where all their backlinks are coming from, but also understand the messaging is super powerful. Why did you create a web page the way that you did? What are the selling points that you're making? If you look at that from your eyes at your competitors, you can start to get some pretty interesting angles. And I got to tell you, like, that's what a lot of people miss out on. It's like, well, I'm not like my competitors. And it's like, yeah, no, you are. But, like, let's be honest, like, you have to compete with these people and you're not doing the same things in terms of the tools. So you're missing out. Another one that I didn't list here is actually Wappalizer. I think Wappalizer is actually really helpful. This is especially important if your competitors are running ads and you want to start running ads. So Big Spy has been a favorite of mine for a while. There were a number of better tools out there, but everybody kind of, I don't know, eventually puts up crazy big paywalls. Ahrefs, I can see this at least from the perspective of Google search, but Big Spy is great for social media. So if I can see the way that they're selling, the articulation behind the ad and what some of the main features are and the visuals, then I can say with some level of certainty that they must have continued to run these ads because, yeah, like they have a number of engagements or because they worked. And if you know that your competitors' ads are working, then all right, screw it. Why aren't you basically copying their ad and pushing up the numbers in terms of the cost of CPC in order to basically take what would have been their customers? It's something to think about. It's a different way of exploring, and I think the tools are great. Big Spy has a nice little freemium plan. Some outbound hacks that I often end up getting into like crazy good conversations with, especially with salespeople, because salespeople love to like go into the default mode. Default mode is like, I know what I'm doing, and it's the old school way, pound the phones. Like, no, it's not. Like, it's so not that. So I always break the whole process of outbound into 4 different areas. First, I target. Who am I reaching out to and why does it matter? Like, who is the decision maker? And everybody has this like idiot approach of, well, it's the CEO writes the check. And it's like, yeah, all right, but if it's a 5,000 person company, what are the odds that you're actually going to get a meeting with the CEO unless it's an enterprise solution that they desperately need? Unlikely. More than often, and I see this internally as well with, I have 10 employees over at Clint. I still have some of my earliest employees tap me on the shoulder and say, somebody sent me a message on LinkedIn about this tool. And it's like, yeah, that's like the worst tool ever. And I know these guys, like, don't worry about it, move on. But at least it came to my attention. So the idea is targeting, super important. Discovery. Discovery means like, where are the email addresses that are actually relevant for these people? Where are the watering holes that they go? And a million different things. Email validation I'll go into later, but it basically means don't get your emails in the spam folder. And then the outreach mechanisms are basically, how do we streamline all of this in an automated fashion to be sequenced in 3 or 4 emails over the span of about a week and a half, and we're trying to personalize the messaging. So actually, and I have one little more point on this. I love talking about it, sorry, but I think everybody has seen some of these videos of like street vendors or different people that have this whole process down to such a fluid way of doing things that like if you or I stepped into this, we would make a total mess. But it's because they've eliminated all like the muscle twitches and all the pauses. They managed to make it a thing of art. And I think we need to think of our outreach like that. So I already kind of talked about this. Sorry, I just get super into it. I don't know if people can tell, but like I really dig this stuff. So like I hope it's resonating. But the idea is like I build out different customer buyer personas and start testing those against the assumptions that I have versus what my clients have. And ultimately, the learnings are somewhere in between. Building these out allow me to sequence different types of emails and also segment the different types of outbound engagement opportunities. So ultimately, I'm able to say with some level of certainty, this is the right chain of emails for the right group of people based off the previous tests. Like we've all run maybe a little bit of science experiments when we were taking science classes. It's the same thing. It's just a more structured approach to marketing. Discovery is what it's all about when it comes to finding real data on people that are in our target buying group. There are so many different tools. New ones pop up every single day. Depends on what you're doing and what your budget is. I don't know, like I have a soft spot for Snovio because they're relatively new and it does what I want. I would say a lot of people have kind of fallen for Find That Lead, and there's a number of different opportunities there. Ninja Outreach and BuzzStream have been around for a little while, so it just depends. But yeah, that's where you would find everybody's information. And then verifying the emails. I, for a very long time, used Never Bounce. I think it's a little overpriced, to be honest. Clear Out is where the game's at. But the whole point of the reducing of bounces is if you're sending out 50, 100 emails a day over time, then you want to make sure that you're not hitting the spam folders to a degree in which every future email is then flagged and thrown in the spam folder. There is a section in here where I talk about creating burner domains, because over time you should be sending out hundreds of thousands of emails to target buyers. And ultimately, yeah, you're going to burn these domains out. So you need, if my company is clintmarketing.com, I also own clintmarketing.co, clintmar.com. Like all these different things are just nice ways to kind of plan for a rainy day. The outreach that is sequenced is super interesting. I think a lot of people screw this up. Lemlist for a really long time was one of my favorite tools. They have a bunch of new features that continue to roll out. I would say I've kind of continued to lean towards Snovio because there's less rules and less issues. But I would say between the two of those, if you look Lemlist or Snovio up, I would say that the blogs contain some really juicy stuff. For those that maybe have done more of this manually or salespeople, you'll probably recognize Mailshake, Gmass. Like they're pretty common. They're for sending out sequenced emails. I love using merge fields, and that's kind of fun. Like when you're able to get behind or around the wall of like people are tired of receiving the same junk. So like in the top right, this is pulled directly from Lemlist. And it looks like you took the time to create an image that says, go for coffee and insert the merge field, whatever the name is. I have so many people that are like, oh my God, it was like really creative. Like you put your like yourself up there and then you kind of wrote something on top of the image. Like, yeah, I'll go for coffee. And it's like, all right, dickhead. Like, no, there was a merge field, but thank you for thinking that. Like I took extra time. The other way of doing that is making sure that you're giving somebody something to click inside that email. Bottom right, I actually get a ton of clicks by people thinking that there's actually an embedded video, which you cannot do inside of email. The bottom one is kind of part of my feeling on using the same templates. Like seriously create your own or find something that you love, but don't use the same one that everybody else does, which is like that third follow-up email that always comes where somebody's like, I haven't been able to secure a time to talk with you. Is it because, number one, you're busy but are very interested in talking with me? Number two, you're not interested and just haven't had the heart to tell me? Or number three, you're being chased by a hippo and want me to call for help? And my reaction is Robert Downey Jr. on the bottom left, where it's like, come on, like come up with something good, like play with it a little bit. And I think you have to put on the creative hat in order to do that. But everybody's capable of that. CRMs are super helpful. I usually talk about Streak and Calendly in here as well. Streak, Streak, is a great tool if you're sending out more manual messages to be able to see if somebody actually opened it up, if they forwarded it along to other people. Pipedrive is a great little CRM tool. I'm starting to lean more towards Salesflare. I need to add them into this. But yeah, this is kind of the full spectrum of how we go about making sure that we're getting people into something in the way of a real funnel that you can monetize. Oh, there we go. And I mentioned Streak later. So yeah, I can't say enough good things about tools that are like Streak. I just wish they didn't. Doing a ton of outbound, super important. I click on signatures far more than any of the links that are inside of emails. Often what I've done in the past and what I continue to do is make sure to link to the most popular blog or something that we've released that we're very proud of, or a webinar that's upcoming. There's a lot of different tools down on the bottom that you can use that have a freemium model or a paid model. Whenever I link to my LinkedIn, so like the fourth icon on there is my LinkedIn, I make sure to add !sub_confirmation=1. This will allow me to actually put up one of those messages on LinkedIn if they go to my LinkedIn channel to subscribe to my channel. And so, yeah, I get a few subscribers here and there from people just being like, oh, I don't know what this is. And then it's like, gotcha. So I think it's a great little tool or a great little hack and seems to do all right by me. So yeah, always a different angle and continue to build out and test things inside of a lot of the different email signatures that you have. I'm going to blow through user journey. I genuinely believe in building tech stacks at scale. It's one of the things that I really love to do with Clinton Marketing, on top of obviously the creative content. But the reality is I think most people don't take the time to put together the user journey or to build out a user journey backwards from what is the conversion model, or how do people give me their credit card so I can be like, cool, we got another sale. And I work my way backwards. There's so many different great tools to be able to map this out. Draw.io is one that isn't on here and is super powerful, and it's basically the freemium version of Lucidchart, Funnelytics, and Glyphy. So have fun, you're welcome. If I'm actually building up a software as a service platform, I either go with Amplitude, Mixpanel, or Kissmetrics. If it's more of a mobile app on, doesn't matter, iOS or Android, I'm always going with Mixpanel or Kissmetrics. But the goal is to make sure that I have all the flows of all the users that are going in, so I can dictate, all right, every user that becomes a buyer does these three things. And if I don't push them to do those things, then unfortunately they're never going to convert. So we're kind of all wasting our time. So help people along is basically what I'm saying. This is what it looks like when you actually map a user journey. You look like a crazy person and not a very nice haircut. So the reality is, like, you need to really spend some time on this to figure out where are the gaps, or where can we take 5 clicks down to half of one or none, and that's often some of the things that we just get too close to the project and forget about it. This is another look at somebody that, serial killer tracking. It's the same thing. I think a lot of people miss the ball on actually re-engaging with the people that are currently coming to their site. My favorite for a really long time was Intercom, and for those that have used it, you probably know that the pricing went up by like 3x a little while ago. So like it's priced me out. I'm starting to lean more into autopilot, but Customer IO has also been user-friendly. I think Drift is wildly overpriced, but that's just me. The whole idea is kind of going on what I said, is to make sure that we're engaging people based on their action. So if they're not completing one of those really important actions that result in them becoming a buyer, I really need to continue to push them to do that. And the only way to measure that is tag things up in something like a mixed panel or amplitude, and then make sure that we're sending triggered based emails based on user behavior. Last thing that I'll go into, I want to leave a little bit of time for questions. I realize I move super fast. Social media hacks, I think they're a dime a dozen, and some work for a short period of time. They're always valuable. I think there's so much interesting stuff that takes place when you're scraping engagement on posts of either competitors or on something that's caught a little bit of virality. Phantom Buster or TextAU are great little tools that allow you to scrape all the people that have engaged, whether it's a comment or a like on a specific post. Now, you need to make sure that you're setting yourself up with a proxy so you don't get your LinkedIn account banned. But the reason that we do this is we want to create custom audiences to then target against everybody that has liked a specific post. Because if you like this, you're going to love me. There's a lot of different ways to go into different bells and whistles on this, but I want to leave a little bit of time. But yeah, go nuts. I think a lot of growth hackers talk about using Phantom Buster, but not a lot do. And by the way, if you're like trying to jot down all these notes, again, connect with me on LinkedIn, Taylor Ryan. You'll get all of this stuff, so long as you're not a direct competitor. Like, just bear with me. The last one I'll show in all of a few minutes here, I'll try to run really fast, is a really fun hack that some people in Scandinavia are a little uncomfortable playing with, but hear me out. The idea is basically swapping out a successful post that was mimicked or copied from somewhere else and put into a Facebook group that has a sizable audience of people that would also buy your stuff. You can also find something in terms of valuable content on Reddit by sorting over the last like 30 days to 3 months, Quora or BuzzSumo. So what are the things that are the most popular throughout that? Put that into groups that already exist. So first thing I do is I discover all the groups that are related to my niche or my target buyers. I have a ton of fake LinkedIn and Facebook accounts, so like that's kind of how I'm able to play ball with this. But yeah, you can also use your own. Just don't join above like 50, then people will start being like, dude, you're a part of too many groups. I'm not letting you in. So then the next stage is like, cool, I need to collect the most valuable content. And the most valuable content usually has upwards of about 100 likes, 50 to 75 plus engagements. Sometimes it's flipped. It just depends on the nature of the post. But you'll see pretty quickly within a lot of these groups that it often mimics something that everybody's frustrated with. So if you find content where somebody's kind of explaining a frustration or something that we all kind of have dealt with in our niche, then it's a pretty good example of a win. There's always a call to action. There's always controversy, and sometimes there's questions, but memes work so well. And then the goal is to build out a list of these. So if I know this one came from group XYZ, I'm going to post it in group ABC. And the goal is to make sure that you join groups that users are allowed to post stuff themselves. But it should be pretty straightforward. So then after that, we want to make sure that we tweak the post a little bit so it doesn't look exactly like a post from somewhere else and nobody can call us out. Sometimes with images you can't do that, but we've done that. Let's just take that for granted. And then the goal is like, okay, cool. Once you've reached that maximum threshold of 75 likes to 50 to 75 comments, then the goal is to edit the post, copy in a link for whatever it is that you're trying to sell. Maybe it's a money page, maybe it is a blog post, maybe it's just your homepage, and then save. And so what ends up happening is you see this giant jump in traffic. And the other thing that we can do to continue to bump this up to the top of that particular page or group is we make comments on other users' comments. So it continues to jump up to the very top. So you're capturing the maximum amount of eyes throughout this. This is how a lot of people generate some free Facebook traffic. This is actually a screen grab from Nick Gordon, but I love the technique. The other thing that I find like really interesting is that this actually starts to play within organic. And I kind of understand why. The idea is that if you can show that a particular website is drawing in traffic via referral from social media, then there must be something really interesting there to pull in that many users. So if we think about that, then this is like another SEO signal that not a lot of people are measuring. something to play with, something to think about. You have to have, I don't know, a little bit of flexibility within morals, but I don't know. It works, and this is what I do for clients. So, like, I don't know, shoot me. But the idea of all of this stuff is please don't spend money on boosting content that really doesn't get any engagement. I use a lot of boosting in the way that I basically create campaigns using custom audiences targeting and convert the best performing content basically. It just always makes sense. And I could go into that stuff later, but I want to leave a little bit of time for questions because I don't know, I always over prepare for these things. So yeah, let's see where we're at. Am I on time? We doing good?
Hello there. Well, I think you have still some time because you doubled time through this, but it was incredibly. I mean, just read the comments. People loved it, so we have more positive comments than questions, which is usually a very good sign of value.
Awesome.
And of course, would be awesome to have some more questions, but we actually do have one, and that is, what marketing book or books do you recommend?
Oh, yeah, that's always a tough one. So the problem with different growth hacking guides or books is that ultimately what works yesterday or what was kind of like the new flavor of the month last month is not always relevant. And so I would say that I get more value out of subscribing to either Slack channels. So like Online Geniuses is probably one of my favorites. I would say there's so many different social groups. If you look growth hacking up inside of Facebook, find groups that have 30,000 plus members. By and large, there's like enough of an active community that they start kicking out the people that are really like spammy and just overselling.
Yeah.
And ultimately, like, yeah, they start kind of floating to the top anyways. So yeah, growth hacking, SEO, content marketing, all that stuff can be searched in Facebook. Facebook, by and large, I would say is the best channel for marketing. And then maybe lastly, like there are some pretty good subreddits out there, depending on what you're trying to learn, where people just give away so much shit for free. Like it's
Mhm.
crazy. So I hope that helps.
Definitely. I mean, it's a great point in terms of if you really want to learn a lot from books. Actually, I also made the experience that you can get a lot of incredibly valuable content for free online. Not only like events like these and masterclasses like yours, but as you said, subreddits, or just subscribe to Skillshare courses. That's where I learned a lot about SEO from the founder of Moz. So yeah,
Nice.
one book I would like to add is actually Seth Godin's "This Is Marketing." That is less a book on things like how to scale your business, and this are the best things you can do on social media, but it's much more about the essence of what marketing should be about. So yeah, if anybody want to read that up, that's an incredibly valuable book to learn uh, the essence of what you should do, what marketing can actually do in terms of purposeful marketing. So that's one book I would definitely recommend on marketings.
Nice.
All right, there are some things popping up here. I didn't catch the Facebook groups repost swap hack. Can you show an example? Facebook
Well,
group repost slash swap hack.
yeah, I don't have any examples in the presentation, and given that we've already had some challenges with the sharing, and I don't obviously want to share the exact post that I've
Yeah, sure.
that I've stolen. Trust me, it works. And if you're not in a competing agency, connect with me on LinkedIn, and I'll give you the slides so that you get the step by step. I know it seems like it's, I don't know, really complex because I move so fast. But the reality is, like, all of these hacks are relatively straightforward when you work through a process.
Mm.
And so long as you understand the end goal, it's just a matter of kind of figuring out, all right, I go from 0 to 1, 1 to 2, 3 to 4. Like the first time you do some of these, it'll take 5 hours. The second time, it takes 20 minutes. It's just kind of working through it.
Yeah, I agree 100%. All right. So the another question from Johannes: would you make push notification requests on website one click or second click? One signal
Uh,
recommends one signal recommends second click now, but one click converts way better.
Interesting. Well, if we're talking about like push notifications, like push crew that now is WVO, I assume that that's what she's referring to.
Mhm.
Push notifications are this weird animal, right? So like people tend to accept or allow or click OK when they see a pop-up that looks like, oh, maybe it's like a translation thing. Like nobody actually reads those, which is crazy frustrating. And the unsubscribe rate is extremely high for people that actually receive a device-specific push notification when you do send it out. So I don't know, like I have varying degrees of skepticism as to like what is inherently valuable with that. Really depends on your product, whether or not it makes sense. If we are talking about exit pop-ups, I always think the least amount of clicks is the best way to go. But I assume you were talking about push notifications. So yeah, either or.
Yeah, that's a good take on it. We also here at Pirate at least are big fans of rather go with 2 click, or also obviously now with GDPR you have to go with the subscription confirmation. But as you said, in the past we also always had the better experience with with less people but much more engaged people than just
Yes.
try to grab the big masses and then get the unsubscribe numbers incredibly high. So yeah, aim for lesser but high quality and engaged people.
Yeah.
So yeah. All right. So other content questions. We have the questions about the recording. We'll get back to that also later. But do we have another question? Recording. Everybody wants a recording. I saw on your website that you also offer a growth hacking masterclass. So is it a similar one? Because I was just then doing some stalking, and then I saw that you're currently
Yeah.
offering your masterclass
Love it.
actually at a huge discount. Is it similar? Is it the same?
It's the exact same one. So I don't know, cost of living is a little different here in Denmark, but I
Yeah.
created growthsecrets.org and partnered with one of the co-working spaces out here. And basically, I only had like 15 seats to really sell out. And
Wow.
yeah, it was for $1,200. And so it's the exact same one. And like I promote this thing and people are like, "Feh, what about $5?" And it's like, no, dude, not $5. Like what? Like it's crazy. So yeah, if you go to growthsecrets.org, you basically get the entire masterclass. I've trimmed down 2 days worth of content and some of like the exercises into, I believe it's 8.5 hours. But it's all this stuff and more. It's all the different tools, different processes. Yeah, like it's what I spent a good portion of COVID-19 doing, was transforming that into an online course.
Great. Yeah, I mean, to all viewers, definitely go check it out. I think it's a very fair point you brought up about people always wanting more content for free. And yeah, I think that's just a modern thing of the internet, where many people, as you said, obviously copy things and then put it up for free or with a lot of ads. But I would say that if you recognize real value, you should go ahead and know what it will bring to you later on. So whether it's then $50 or $200, depending on the course or whatever value it is, it should definitely be worth it. And you should always have a good feeling of paying for good content and valuable content.
Much appreciated. And yeah, I'm totally with you. I wish I could give it away for free. I've tried that in different places and like it still doesn't make a difference. So yeah, I dropped the price from 200 down to 100 down to 49. So yeah, it's marked down significantly, and I think I'll end up pushing it back up. Yeah, over the span of September, because I have way too many conferences. So if you get into growthsecrets.org, you can get in now.
All right. So then I would say maybe one last, maybe even two. We have to see where we at. I'm anxious when marketing and selling. It's probably some more flexibility thing. What's your tip? Exposure?
Okay. So like, yeah, there's so many interesting like thought experiments in terms of like where does marketing stop and where does sales begin.
Hmm.
I think ultimately what it comes down to is marketing is supposed to be the engine for sales. There's obviously in a digital age, there's plenty of conversions that require zero touch. And to me, that is pure marketing. But at some point, your copy on those pages has to mimic something in the way of sales triggers and reducing something in the way of objections. So you kind of have to wear different hats. You have to one day be a bit of a sales minded person and also a marketer in order to make sure that you're reaching the goals of like, you got to sell some shit.
Yeah, that's exactly true. I mean, if you're a founder, I don't think it's a moral flexibility thing. It, of course, always depends on your product. So if you're already not very comfortable with what you're promoting or selling, that's the first red flag, I'd say.
Yeah,
And yeah, the other thing is if you really believe in the product, you should always be fine with going out and selling. The other point is, of course, being very outgoing. That's something that you just have to learn.
I'm with you on that.
All right. Then the last question. Well, one Alexandru is asking again for the website, so maybe we will. Josie, maybe you can tip it into the Slido in talk. The website that Taylor just mentioned. It was growth marketing secrets.
Growthsecrets.org. Yeah, I
Growth.
can't get into the comments, otherwise I
Yeah, it's no
would.
problem. Josie. So then the last question: how do you increase organic reach on Instagram or platforms where it's now very difficult?
Yeah. So there's a growth hacky approach, and then there's just the hard nosed, like regular approach. So, like, growth hacky would be do a Google search for GitHub and Instagram scraper. That will allow you to scrape your favorite Instagram, influencers, and basically build up a Instagram account that is publishing on either Publer or Tailwind or some of these others via Zapier. You can basically build up a huge influencer group based off of scraped posts, because Instagram is not in the business of flagging duplicate content, which is pretty strange when you think about it.
Yeah.
Alternatively, building out using automated like action scripts within Photoshop and using a Google spreadsheet or a CSV file, you can basically scale those very quickly so that you have enough content in there. Do a Google search quite simply for best practices for Instagram, and you'll see like, oh, minimum of 10 hashtags and summaries and different like faces and that type of stuff. Go after like medium hashtags and medium difficulty for that. There's so many different ways, but I don't know. I can't really answer that within 30 seconds.
Good point. Yeah. I think that in general, if you need to search for anything in terms of marketing, the fact that marketers are so skilled in SEO and bringing out their content will always give you so much free content when you search for things. So yeah, go ahead and look up some options for growth hacking within Instagram. All right, I think we're at the end of this great masterclass. People loved it from the positive content. That's at least what I
Awesome.
would say. I did so too. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope that people would reach out to you and get to know more about you and Clit marketing as well. So from me and the Pirate team, again, thank you so much for sharing this valuable insights, and hope to see you soon again.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Thanks.